Welcome to the Mike Bates Show. This is Mike Bates. Today is October 3rd. We are exactly 1 month from the November 3rd elections. Before I begin today's program, I want to give you a phone number. 800-273-8255. That is the phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Now, I don't really think anything I'm going to say this hour is worth killing yourself over. In fact, I guess nothing is, ever. But as I've had this conversation with people off the air, they've said to me, I think in jest, I might as well kill myself now. This is going to be a very depressing program. But the information I'm going to share, you need to know. Every presidential election, people say, this is the most important election in our nation's history. And I understand why they do, because every 4 years we have a big decision to make on the direction of this country. But this time, it really is the most important election in our nation's history. With the possible exception of 1864, when Abraham Lincoln defeated George McClellan, the Democrat, whose party platform was to immediately end hostilities of the Civil War and negotiate a peace with the Confederacy, which could have split the nation. So arguably 1864 was more important. Maybe this is the second most important election in our nation's history. But it is certainly the most important in our lifetimes. Because we are at a crossroads. We're at a fork in the road. And it is a fork we cannot backtrack on. If we go down the road that Biden and the Democrats want to take us down, it will be a road that has those one-way spikes in it, like the kind they have at the rental car lots at the airport that'll puncture your tires if you go the opposite direction. The 2020 election is a choice between saving our republic and permanently losing it. Because if the Democrats win the White House, take the Senate, and retain the House, they will move swiftly and decisively to entrench themselves as the permanent ruling party in America. And there will never again be a Republican president. Now, before you think I'm just some lunatic ranting with some conspiracy theory, hear me out on this. Because every single thing that I'm going to tell you the Democrats will do the next time they have the presidency, the Senate, and the House, they have already proposed doing. And in many cases have actually voted on and passed. It just hasn't become law because the Republicans haven't gone along with it. And those things the Democrats will do will make it impossible for a Republican to ever win the presidency again. And it will make it nearly, if not entirely, impossible for Republicans to ever have control of the Senate and the House again. Now, let's get one thing out of the way right up front, because too many people take comfort in the filibuster. Oh, Mike, but without a supermajority, the Republicans can stop it. No, they can't, because the Democrats will get rid of the filibuster. Harry Reid got rid of the filibuster for judicial appointments, meaning that a simple majority could confirm district court and circuit court nominees. Ostensibly, he excluded the Supreme Court from that. But when Donald Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch to the court, the Democrats launched a filibuster, and Mitch McConnell said, hey, if the Democrats can get rid of the filibuster for judicial appointments, so can we, and so they did. And both Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh were confirmed to the court with very narrow majorities, well short of what a filibuster would have stopped. And so what the Democrats will do is simply get rid of the filibuster for legislation. Nothing stopped them from getting rid of it for judicial appointments, and nothing will stop them from getting rid of it for legislation. So everything I'm going to say here can pass the Senate on a simple majority. And already in the House, things can pass with a simple majority. So the first thing the Democrats are going to do, if they get a majority, is legalize between 12 and 30 million illegal aliens. We don't actually know how many that is, but they will legalize all of them. And with that legalization will come citizenship. And with that citizenship will come the right to vote. And with that right to vote will come millions of reliable Democrat votes in perpetuity. And just in case you're taking solace that the courts will stop them, that won't happen either. Because the Democrats will pack the courts. The number of judges around the country is set by legislation, not by the Constitution. So the Democrats can simply add district judges, add appellate court judges, and add Supreme Court judges. There's nothing magical about the number 9. The Constitution doesn't give the number. In fact, the first Supreme Court had 6 justices on it. But because Democrats are all too willing to play dirty pool, they will simply pack the court to 13 or whatever other number they feel they need to get their way. Because President Biden or President Harris would appoint those justices, and a simple Democrat majority in the Senate would confirm them. And now suddenly your 6-3 rulings become 7-6, with the liberal wing winning, of course. And there's nothing that can be done to stop that. So the filibuster won't save us, and the courts won't save us. What else do Democrats plan to do? Well, they want to impose single-payer health care. Medicare for all, or whatever they happen to call it. But they will nationalize the healthcare system, in which case people become more and more dependent on the government to provide their basic health care, and in exchange for votes, Democrats will continue to provide that and expand what they provide. Now, of course, the nation can't afford it, but that's neither here nor there. We'll just print more money, right? Democrats, by a simple majority, will grant statehood to Puerto Rico. That will get them 2 additional Democrat senators and 5, if not 6, Democrat representatives. They can do the same thing for Washington, D.C. Now, they can't make all of Washington, D.C. a state because the Constitution calls for an independent federal district for the nation's capital. But they could easily pass legislation that reduces the size of the special federal district to basically the mall area, the government buildings. They're basically the White House, the Capitol building, the Supreme Court. Done. That's all you need. And the rest of it can be a state with 2 reliably Democrat senators, along with a representative in the House. Democrats have announced they plan to impose term limits on the Supreme Court. Now, arguably, those term limits are not constitutional because the Constitution very clearly says that federal judges get to serve for life. But the end run around that, as has been proposed, is that they will simply take those so-called retired Supreme Court justices, give them some title of senior justice or whatever they happen to give them, and tell them, hey, you can either go play golf the rest of your life, or you can go hear district court cases. But you retain your title as a justice, and you retain your pay. And arguably, if they do that, that would comport with the constitutional requirement that they serve for life. Democrats will pass sweeping national gun control laws. They will reimpose the so-called assault weapons ban of 1994, outlawing millions of firearms, and they will confiscate those. Oh, you think D.C. Heller and Chicago v. McDonald are going to stop that? Did you not hear what I just said about the court? They're going to pack the court, which is going to say it's perfectly legitimate and constitutional. That court will say, hey, at the time the Constitution was written, A firearm meant a single-shot flintlock musket. So sure, the right of the people to keep single-shot flintlock muskets shall not be infringed, but anything else infringe away. Those two cases, D.C. Heller and Chicago v. McDonald, were 5-4 decisions. 4 justices, ostensibly qualified to sit on the highest court in the land, did not believe that the right of the people to keep and bear arms was a right of the people. Now, we know that the Constitution means what it says, but under the law, the Constitution means what the Supreme Court says it says. And a Supreme Court packed by the Democrats will say that the right of the people to keep and bear arms is not a right of the people. Democrats will also impose hate speech laws, making much of the criticism of what they do illegal because it's hateful. Now understand, the whole point of the First Amendment is to protect speech that people don't like. Happy talk doesn't need constitutional protection because nobody objects to it. The First Amendment absolutely protects hate speech. But Democrats say it doesn't. And their appointed judges will go along with it. And we, the people, will be powerless to do anything about it. Democrats will impose some form of this Green New Deal, which will impose a carbon tax on literally everything, because literally everything requires energy. Name for me one thing in your life that doesn't require energy. You can't come up with anything. Because even if you said, oh, Mike, I've got a garden in my backyard, I don't even need to drive to the market. Yeah, well, somebody got those seeds to you. Somebody manufactured those tools. Somebody brought in the fertilizer. And what? You're going to have all hand tools like the Amish? Everything requires energy. And so if you can control energy through some sort of planet-saving climate change agenda, you control literally everything. And if you think you're going to vote them out, no, you're not. Because the Democrats will impose such sweeping national requirements for elections that Republicans will never win a national election. Every single thing I'm about to mention has passed the Democrat House. Mandatory vote-by-mail ballots sent to every registered voter nationwide. A prohibition on voter IDs nationwide, rendering illegal all state laws that require witness signatures on mailed-in ballots, mandatory nationwide early voting, federal regulation of the placement of all polling locations in the country, and finally, rendering illegal all state laws that prohibit ballot harvesting. Can the federal government do this? Constitutionally, I mean? Yeah. The federal government can regulate the process for federal elections. State and local elections occur at the same time as a federal election simply for convenience and cost savings. So the process is the same. So if Democrats are able to impose all this for federal elections, they will be in place for state and local elections too, which means Democrats win at the state and local level too. And remember, it doesn't have to be universal. They don't have to have every seat. They only have to have a majority. And the day they get that, they will take the next 2 years to permanently entrench it. And there will be no way out, ever. The next time the Democrats control the presidency, the Senate, and the House, the historic system of checks and balances will be demolished because they will bring the judiciary into that tyrannical rule as well. And they will never be voted out of office. Ever. So what are they going to do to make sure they win this time? Stick around, and I'll tell you when the Mike Bates Show continues.